For most drivers, an 11th place finish at Bristol would barely register. No celebration, no panic, just another line in the results sheet. But for Bubba Wallace, that 11th place run meant something much bigger. Because while it looked like a small recovery on the surface, it also marked the moment he quietly lost control of one of the most important hidden battles in NASCAR. He did not lose a race. He did not lose a playoff spot. He lost the Cup Series lead in stage points. And if you understand what stage points really say about a driver, then you know this was never just a stat. It was a signal. Source. At the start of the season, Bubba Wallace was not getting the same level of hype as some of the sport's biggest names, but his results were starting to tell a very dangerous story. Through the first 5 races, he was the only driver in the entire field without a finish worse than 11th. That kind of consistency does not happen by accident. It means the driver is maximizing clean days, the team is avoiding mistakes, and the car has enough pace to stay relevant every single week. While other contenders were swinging between brilliance and trouble, Bubba was building a season the hard way. Quietly. Efficiently. And most importantly, sustainably. That steady opening stretch pushed him all the way up to second in the point standings. Source. But NASCAR seasons almost never fall apart in one giant moment. They slip in layers. A bad finish here. A mistake there. A race where the speed is good but the result is awful. And that is exactly what happened to Wallace. Darlington hit first. Martinsville hit next. 2 races, 2 finishes of 34th or worse, and suddenly one of the strongest starts in the Cup garage looked far less secure. He dropped from second in the standings into a 4-way tie for 8th, and because of the tiebreaker, he was officially shown as 11th heading into Bristol. In just a short stretch, the season had changed from momentum building to damage control. Source. The Martinsville incident mattered for more than the finish. It also tested the emotional side of Bubba Wallace's season. After making contact with Carson Hocevar late in the race, Wallace admitted that Hocevar did nothing wrong and said he apologized directly. He owned the mistake, admitted he was angry at himself, and made it clear that the team needed to move on rather than let one ugly afternoon define the year. That response matters, because every playoff run eventually reaches a point where raw speed is not enough. The team has to reset mentally, not just mechanically. Wallace and 2311 Racing were suddenly in exactly that position. Source. That is why Bristol was so important. It was not just another race. It was the first chance to prove that the recent slide had not become a trend. And in one way, Wallace did respond. He finished 11th, which stopped the streak of disastrous results and moved him back up to 8th in the standings with 236 points. That is the kind of result a playoff-caliber team can stabilize around. Not spectacular, but solid. Not headline-worthy, but useful. The problem is that NASCAR stories are often hiding underneath the finishing order, and the real Bristol story was unfolding long before the checkered flag. Source. Coming into Bristol, Bubba Wallace led the entire Cup Series in stage points with 60. That number is more revealing than many fans realize. Stage points are not random bonus points. They are one of the clearest ways to identify who is running near the front before late race chaos changes everything. They reward speed, execution, restarts, short-run balance, pit strategy, and race-long competitiveness. If wins tell you who finished the job, stage points often tell you who has actually been controlling the race. And for weeks, that driver was Bubba Wallace. Even after scoring 0 stage points at Martinsville, he still held the series lead. That meant his early season speed had been strong enough to survive a bad week. Source. But Bristol changed that. Wallace finished 9th in stage 1 and 9th again in stage 2, giving him only 4 total stage points on the day. 4 points is not nothing. On another weekend, it might have been enough to keep the lead. But this was not another weekend. Ryan Blaney came in right behind Wallace in the category and delivered exactly the kind of day Bubba could not afford from a direct rival. Blaney scored 17 stage points, finishing 3rd in stage 1 and 2nd in stage 2. That swing alone was enough to move him past Wallace for the series lead in stage points. Then Kyle Larson added even more pressure by winning both stages and collecting the maximum 20 points, pulling himself into a tie with Wallace in the category. In the span of one race, Bubba went from leading the field to watching one rival pass him and another draw level. Source. And that is why this story matters more than the headline suggests. Bubba Wallace did not collapse at Bristol. He did not throw away the day. He actually recovered some ground in the standings. But this was the first clear sign that the advantage he built early in the season is no longer protecting him the way it did before. The margin is shrinking. The room for error is gone. A decent day is no longer enough when the drivers around you are having great ones. That is how strong seasons suddenly start to feel fragile. Not because everything breaks at once, but because the field stops giving you time to recover. Source. And yet, this is not the story of a season slipping away. At least not yet. There are still reasons Bubba Wallace remains one of the most interesting drivers to watch right now. Even after the bad stretch, he is still second in the series when it comes to the percentage of total points scored through stages. More than 27% of his points have come before the final flag, a sign that the pace inside the number 23 car is still real. The speed has not disappeared. The structure has not vanished. And just as important, Wallace still sits 60 points above the playoff cut line. That means this season is still recoverable, still manageable, still waiting for a response. Source. Now the schedule turns to Kansas, and that is where this story could pivot again. Kansas is not just another stop for Bubba Wallace. It is a track where he has won before, a place where the conversation can change fast if the speed returns and the finish matches it. It also arrives at an emotional moment, with Wallace set to make his 300th Cup Series start while carrying a Boys and Girls Clubs of America scheme connected to his upcoming Alumni Hall of Fame induction. That does not guarantee anything on track, but it adds meaning to the weekend. And sometimes in a long season, meaning matters. It sharpens focus. It gives a driver a reason to reset the narrative. Source. So that is the real story here. Bubba Wallace lost the lead in stage points, yes. But more importantly, he lost the invisible cushion that had been protecting his season. For weeks, that category proved he was one of the sharpest and most consistent performers in the Cup Series, even when the spotlight was elsewhere. Now that edge is gone, or at least under direct threat. The next few races will decide whether Bristol was simply a statistical correction after an unsustainable start, or the first warning that Wallace's early strength is becoming harder to hold. Because in NASCAR, the standings tell you where a driver is. But the hidden categories tell you where he is headed. And right now, Bubba Wallace is sitting right at that line between recovery and regret. The scary part for the rest of the field is that this story can still flip back in his favor very quickly. An 8th place standing, solid underlying pace, and a playoff cushion mean the season is far from broken. But the pressure is different now. The easy consistency phase is over. From here, every race asks a harder question. Can Bubba Wallace turn promising speed into control again? Can 23XI Racing stop reacting and start dictating? Can Kansas become the place where this season regains its shape? Or will Bristol be remembered as the afternoon when a quiet warning became something much bigger? That is what makes this moment fascinating. Bubba Wallace did not need a wreck or a blow-up to send a message. One respectable finish was enough. Because sometimes the most important loss in NASCAR is not the one everyone sees first. It is the one hiding inside the numbers, waiting for the rest of the season to explain what it really meant.